like Still Shooting, how you're like spelling out your name and it's all these different flows and you're breaking down the difference between a hoe and a woman. Like right out the gate on Psychoactive, that's in really the first song after the murder, which is really a skit. But
Right.
as we tie that back to the sunken place, the thing I thought was interesting is you have the voice alteration like Ice-T did, doesn't get a lot of credit, but he would impersonate a woman or a reporter or a dude on the street all the time. Ice
Yep.
did that, just like Slick Rick did, of course.
hmm
Um, Dane did it. A lot of people did it, but
Eminem currently,
Eminem.
modern time.
So as you look back to like Still Shooting and then thinking of like the sunken place, adding in the voice alteration, the spelling, all these different things, even though that's a style thing, it's also really like a producing thing because you're bringing these different elements to a song.
hmm
So looking back from 91, 92 up till today, how do you find your level of interest in doing that has evolved and your ability to kind of navigate employing it into a song?
I think it's dope that you noticed that. Well, I'm not surprised though, as a historian yourself. I I think prior to my incarceration, I was like we were battle rappers, me, Lynch, the rest of our crew. We were stand right in front of you and bust a rhyme kind of guys. Spit a rap right in your face type of dudes. Bang on the table, bang on the locker, rapping at the high school, rapping in the jail, the county jail, the juvenile halls, whatever. We were right in your face rappers. And then we got put in studios and then had to translate that. So initially, and the significant influence of what Dr. Dre was doing from World Class Wrecking Crew all the way up until the second N.W.A. album. Like by the time I was in the studio working on Psychoactive, uh, they had already were album two in between the EPs. So for album to from Straight Outta Compton to 100 Miles and Running to Niggas for Life. So I was watching all of that and understanding those production styles intuitively more so than like technically. And so you can hear that influence, I think, on my first EP, the album, and then I kind of took a break from that by the time I got to Exorcist and started kind of trying to do my own thing. But by then, I was limited by the fact that I was rapping over the phone and having to use different techniques. So what it did is made me obsessed with vocal production. We're trying to get the best quality. And I think I'm incarcerated and I got albums done at Bernie Grubbin, Brian Gardner doing mixes masters on my stuff, Robert Rebeck doing mixes to just try and get that stuff as clean as I could get it. And so coming home from that experience and having access to being able to build a studio and then having access to a $20 million facility built by Travis O'Gwen and Tech Nine, it's like I am the ultimate kid in a candy store for sure. So I've been having these opportunities and then just being able to work with brilliant engineers from Matt Phoenix, Matt Peters from Kansas City, and Ben, who I think he's the best engineer I've ever encountered, bar none. I don't know who you got to go get to be equal to him, but he's just a savage beast, a cyborg. And so I'll just say I have an idea and he cooks it up. And it's a guy who's done mixes on stuff with Tech Nine and Eminem, Tech Nine and Kendrick Lamar, these. So I'm like, you want to be humble about it. It's like, yeah, they can definitely handle an X-rated song for
You would
sure.
hope.
You would hope, right? It's possible that
Yeah.
they can handle it. So I'll say, hey man, I got an idea. And oh no, I know exactly what you're poem and it's done and it's fast. And so it's giving me this understanding of all the potential opportunities to go in there and do something distinctive and unique to me and allow my fan base to experience different aspects of my creative personality.
Hmm. Okay. And
Yeah.
one also with the sunken place, one of the lines I thought was interesting was talking about having to fail to learn a cautionary tale
Mm-hmm.
because uh I do think that there's a lot of truth in that, but I wanted to ask you from a recording perspective, from a street perspective, from a gang perspective, from a life perspective, from a prison perspective, I didn't participate in most or almost none of that. But I was able to look at people make mistakes and say, I'm not going to do that. So how do you balance having to go through something versus watching something? How does that affect you differently?
I think that someone who has really been through things, uh, as someone who's really been through some serious stuff, I tell people it is not necessary to actually go through the experience to have the benefit of the knowledge of the outcome. It's not necessary. I never, it's things that I've just never done, but other people have done. And I'm like, well, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. You know what I mean? So I would prefer not to try that, period. Or this look like, they pulling that off. Let me get out of shot. I think in life, you have opportunities to be able to benefit from the experience of others, should be doing so and avoiding the mistakes that other people make and incorporating the steps. Like, for instance, I talked to somebody, they were like, yeah, who would you model your career aspirations after? And I'm like, I would say Dr. Dre. And they start talking about Ruthless and World Class Wrecking Crew and all these different era Death Row. And I'm like, I would want to be Aftermath Dr. Dre. And I would want to be post Aftermath Presents Dr. Dre, right? And I'm like, was because he made mistakes that he fixed. Well, I don't want to go through those. I'll just reap the benefit of him having to make those mistakes for me. Someone else suffers so that you don't have to. Tech and Travis rode in cars for shows, then they rode in vans, and then they went to sprinters. Now I get to ride in a bus because they suffered already. And so it's the same concept for me in life, where none of my sons, which I'm blessed now to have two sons, neither of my sons need to go to prison because I did. Like, hey, I can assure you, son, this is not a good idea. It was not a pleasant experience, and it's a better way to live life. So I think it's overrated with people who act like there's certain rites of passage, especially from a streets level, where the entertainment aspect and the fictional aspect took so much control over the reality of people's lives that you have people pretending to be things they weren't and going to great extremes to prove that they were and having completely destructive outcomes for themselves and others. And I just think it was completely unnecessary. And now, we have voices. I use my own as someone with the credentials to be able to say, well, I did everything that you would want to do if you was a G, and I didn't like the trophy. You get the trophy as a Stanley Cup with turds in it and flies buzzing around it. That's your trophy. You're gonna die, or you're gonna go to prison and continue trying to be the hardest G for the rest of your life until you die there. Whether that's short term or long term. It's like, well, I'll pass on that. I think there's better ways to enjoy life.
Yeah. And that being said, how have you noticed or how do you realize the the challenge that we have as rap fans? Nobody likes gangster rap more than me. I love gangster rap, but I love all forms of rap. So it's not that I only like that. But my question is, I've never felt this way, but I've seen so many people that are not in gangs, black, white, rich, poor, whatever. They really get so infatuated with what's presented, whereas I could always tell that there was some element at the minimum, some element, if not the faction part, like that can't be true or that isn't true or it's based on a real story or it's inspired by something they saw or whatever. And I've always wondered, how do you think as a person or people, fans, whatever, they balance, like some fans, they don't seem to get that. And the rappers then I think also don't do a good job of, especially back in the day, they're like, oh, this is all real. This is all, but it wasn't. It never was.
No,
So how did they just do that for the hype of the media? Is that the media's fault for printing something that they didn't question? Like, how does that work? Because I've always been baffled by this, and now we're talking about it, I think, to ask you, because it's so strange that if you listen to Dope Man by N.W.A, it's one I always reference. No one could listen to that and say, being a drug dealer, a drug addict, or the girlfriend of a drug dealer is a good thing. They're all Ice Cube destroys all of that in the one song brilliantly.
Yep. Yeah,
So
he